Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that feels like it's constantly in the news, but maybe rarely gets the kind of nuanced look it deserves.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about Hollywood's approach to diversity and representation.
Mm-hmm.
And our source material for this whole deep dive today, it comes from this really thought-provoking YouTube video. It's titled Representation or Reputation, Hollywood's Fake Diversity Problem by the creator Snarky J.
Right. And our mission today really is to unpack the critical distinctions Snarky J makes. She talks about real versus fake representation.
Okay.
And, you know, this isn't really about saying diversity is good or bad. That's not the point here. It's more about analyzing how it's being implemented.
The how.
Exactly. And why that execution, you know, why it matters so much for the stories we watch and the characters we actually end up connecting with or not.
Exactly. Because you might instinctively think, well, adding more diverse characters, that's always a step forward, right? Win-win.
Seems logical.
But as we're going to unpack today,
right,
it gets much more interesting and frankly kind of complicated.
Yeah.
When you start looking at the motivations behind it all.
Uh-huh.
And the actual execution of those choices. So, yeah. Let's dig in.
Let's do it.
So Snarky Gay, it's worth noting, she's a Hispanic woman herself. She opens her video sharing this personal frustration she has with a lot of Hollywood's current diversity efforts.
Right.
She describes them as feeling like a box-checking contest.
Oof, yeah.
Yeah, something that comes across, in her words, as super annoying and patronizing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's really clear, like you said. She's not against diversity. She emphasizes that. But she pushes back hard against what she calls forced diversity.
Okay.
The kind that, again, her words, objectifies people for their identities instead of genuinely propping them up.
And what's really fascinating there is the core distinction she draws right away. It's like the difference between studios actually trying to write inclusive stories.
Right.
Versus just, you know, slapping identity on a cardboard cutout.
Sorry.
Just for the PR campaign, you know?
Yeah.
The social media buzz.
Totally.
Real representation, she's arguing, builds meaningful characters where identity is part of them. But this fake kind, it's mostly just serving the studio's bottom line and, you know, how things look from the outside.
Optics.
Optics, exactly. So it raises that question, are we seeing real inclusion? Or is it just like strategic?
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
Because we do constantly hear studios advertising films with those phrases, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the first blank character in the MCU. Or,
oh, yeah. It's got a strong female lead.
Strong female lead.
Big
or
way.
This is LGBTQ friendly. And yeah, on the surface, that sounds great. It sounds like progress.
It does. But like you said, it immediately brings up that question, is Hollywood genuinely selling us meaningful characters, or are they just selling the idea of inclusion? And Snarky J, she makes this really compelling case that this whole approach often does a disservice to the identities being included if it's not done well.
Right. If it's shallow.
Exactly. She basically calls it tokenism disguised as progress.
Wow.
Where the character becomes, and this is a sharp phrase she uses, branding with a pulse.
Ouch. Branding with a pulse.
Yeah. Meaning they have no personality, no purpose, and no growth beyond whatever identity they're being used to advertise.
So, okay, if the marketing itself is sort of a red flag, what does she say about how these characters actually end up being written? Are they developed characters in her view?
Well, that's precisely the problem she points out. These characters often end up defined only by those identity traits.
Just the label.
Just the label, their gender, race, sexuality, whatever it is. Instead of being defined by their choices or their flaws or, you know, having an actual character arc, they might even get dropped into stories not even about them, basically just for, as she puts it, scoring diversity points.
So it's less about exploring, like, culture or lived experience.
Or internal conflict. It's more about using identities just for the aesthetics, as she calls it.
Aesthetics. Can you give us some specific examples she uses? Like, what does that look like in practice?
Absolutely. She points to things like the sort of stereotypical strong female lead with no emotional depth.
Ah, yes, we've seen that.
Or an LGBTQ character whose entire personality is, I'm this is my flag, this is my identity, deal with it.
Oh, right, just the announcement.
Exactly. And this is where it gets maybe a little more provocative. She also flags this trend where characters of color are, in her observation, usually written by people suffering with white.
Great, interesting point.
And she argues this can result in stereotypical, trivialized individuals reduced to only their skin color or ethnicity, and potentially in ways that are actually offensive because they lack that authentic human depth.
Wow. And her observation then is these representations representation characters, they often just vanish, like never appear again past episode 3.
Pretty much. Because, she argues, they were just there to check that box.
Right.
It's about getting your cash, as she says, not genuinely representing you or your community, just a quick transaction.
And this leads straight into a major consequence she talks.
Yeah.
The cash is starting to dry up. Because audiences, she believes, aren't buying fake representation anymore. People can tell when they're being pandered to.
Yeah, you can feel it.
You can feel it. As she puts it, pandering is transparent and lazy.
So, okay, this kind of shallow inclusion, it leads to bad writing, weak stories.
Forgettable character.
Forgettable characters that don't really represent anything meaningful. But here's where her argument gets really sharp, I think.
Yeah.
When these poorly written stories, the ones driven solely by ticking an identity box, when they fall flat with audiences.
Which they often do.
The criticism is often deflected, right? It gets labeled as bigotry instead of just calling out the basic bad writing.
Deflection.
And that, she argues, actually hurts representation in the long run. It turns the whole concept into a lightning rod for online discourse instead of fostering genuine appreciation for well-told, inclusive stories. Yeah, and she has this really sharp analogy for that. She says studios will sometimes write a dog story that they know is dog, meaning they know it's just not a good script, right?
Right. A weak product.
A weak product, but then they'll put a member of a marginalized or underrepresented community or identity at the forefront of it.
Ah, I see where this is going.
And then they use that person's identity as a shield for criticism.
Wow. So it kind of weaponizes identity.
Exactly. It makes it really hard to critique the actual quality of the story, the writing, the filmmaking, without being instantly accused of some kind of prejudice.
That is quite an indictment of the process. So, okay, with all these criticisms of fake representation, Snarky J must offer a vision for what good, real representation looks like, right? What's the alternative?
Oh, absolutely. She's very clear on this. She asserts that real representation is story first. That's the foundation.
Story first, okay.
It's not just about putting someone on screen to check a box. It's about telling their story in a way that both acknowledges this facet of their identity, whatever it is.
Right.
And also acknowledges and respects their humanity, full stop.
So the identity is part of it, but not the only part.
Exactly. When a character is well written, she argues, their identity enhances a story. It doesn't replace. Inclusion should only ever serve to deepen the character, not define them entirely.
That makes sense. She really emphasizes that things like culture, background, beliefs, identities, they all matter. But specifically when they genuinely shape the person and shape their experiences and shape the way they look at the world around them.
Yeah, it's about authenticity, about depth, not just a surface level label.
Right.
Ultimately, she concludes, good representation isn't just, a hashtag you slap on something.
Or a marketing bullet point.
Exactly. Not a marketing bullet point to get cheap praise on Twitter. It's about creating a character who ultimately feels real. Real flawed, real human, not an advertisement.
So wrapping this up, after this deep dive into Snarky J's perspective, it really seems the core problem she's identifying isn't diversity itself. Not at all.
No, definitely not.
It's what she calls lazy, corporate-driven diversity. So what does she suggest is the path forward for Hollywood? How do they fix this?
Well, her message is pretty direct. If Hollywood genuinely cared about inclusion, it would stop using it like a promo code.
Good line.
Yeah. Instead, they would actually ask the people who want to be included how they should be included. Involve them.
Yeah, to elaborate.
And then write something worth telling. Focus on the story. Her hope, it seems, is that if they did that, audiences would become genuinely interested in this person's identity and values as a result of a good story.
Instead of just feeling like
they're just watching another box-checking contest. Yeah. Exactly.
What really stands out to me from this whole discussion is how Snarky J really challenges us, the audience, to look beyond just the surface of representation. It's not just about who's on screen, but really drilling down into how they're portrayed and maybe most importantly, why they're even there in that particular story.
Yeah. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, it really raises an important question for all of us, as people who watch movies and TV shows.
What's that?
How do we as consumers encourage the creation of stories where identity genuinely enhances a character, where it adds layers to their humanity rather than just becoming their entire definition?
Right.
The goal maybe isn't just seeing ourselves reflected on screen in a superficial way, but seeing these fully realized, complex individuals who just happen to share aspects of our identity and whose stories resonate because they're fundamental humans.
So maybe something to think about for everyone listening. The next time you see a new character or a new story being heavily promoted for its representation, ask yourself, what are you truly being sold? Is it an identity being marketed as a feature, or is it a fully realized human being whose identity is part of their story?
That's a great question.
And what does that distinction mean for the actual quality of the storytelling? And maybe even for your own connection to the art itself. Definitely something to chew on.